Hello and welcome back to Lessons in Attachment, where today we're going to be diving into self-compassion, compassion-focused therapy. Is a huge part, this approach is a huge part of the work that I do. Compassion-focused therapy is a powerful therapy that can help truly with many, many difficulties as you'll hear, but particularly, I use it around supporting people with their relationship anxiety to improve their relationship with themselves, with others. And it feels like it's a really important topic to bring to my podcast, to bring to this community. What I'm going to discuss with you today is a bit more about compassion focused therapy and what that is. And I'm also going to discuss with you three core elements that really make up the role of being more compassionate towards yourself, more self compassion. When we think about what is self compassion, I feel like a really great way to come to an understanding is to imagine a friend that is going through a difficult time. Imagine them coming to you and you meeting them with an acceptance, an understanding, a kindness, supporting them, not further criticizing them, helping them through this difficult time in any way that you know how. Maybe it is helping them with solutions. Maybe it is just giving them a cuddle. Maybe it is just being there when there are no solutions. But it's that idea of not being judgmental towards them, purposely not making them feel worse and really wanting to support them through this to feel better. And self compassion is basically aiming that towards yourself. Now, that is what people tend to struggle with. People tend to struggle to aim compassion towards themselves. And compassion focused therapy is something that was developed by a psychologist called Paul Gilbert. Paul Gilbert. It's highly researched. It's a very evidence-backed therapeutic approach designed to help people to develop a more compassionate mindset towards themselves and towards others. It is so relevant for anxious attachers who criticize themselves, where fears of rejection and abandonment and self blame and all of these things come so naturally. And self compassion is all about supporting you to, rather than criticize yourself, rather than beat yourself up and constantly give yourself a hard time, it is about thinking about how can I step back, become the observer, and be kinder to myself. And I think it's really key that we touch on three core elements that make up self compassion. What you're going to hear today is a discussion that I had yesterday with some of the members of the Attachment Recovery Gym. So I will be speaking to them to discuss this because, like I say, it's so important, this approach, and it's something that I use across my containers, whether it is one to one, the Attachment Recovery Gym, and Becoming Secure. Now, speaking of which, before we go on, I want to introduce myself and I do want to tell you all about Becoming Secure that is starting in 1 week. Now, I'm Carly Ann. I'm a certified CBT and somatic attachment therapist and a trainee psychotherapist. I know firsthand what it's like to live with an anxious attachment, but I also know the power of healing. For over a decade, I have helped people to not just cope, but to change their lives. I really specialize in teaching people to self soothe, manage their mood, reshape their nervous system, work with overthinking, obsessing, all of the things that you see take place within anxious attachment. Really, it's my mission to help people move from insecure to secure. Now, 1 week from today, I am starting the fourth round of my signature course, Becoming Secure. It's a practical course guiding you to overcome overthinking, obsessing, and painful patterns so that you can have better relationships with yourself and with others. If you feel like you lack control over your mind, your actions, your choices, if you're living with involuntary, all consuming feelings that overwhelm you, I want you to know that this course uses research backed ways to manage your relationship triggers. By the end, you're going to be ready to step into more healthier, more fulfilling ways of loving yourself, being loved, giving love, and experience a more secure kind of love. So I guess it's important for me just to say that, typically, if we're thinking about, well, what's the opposite of compassion? What's the opposite of self-compassion? We're thinking about self-blame, self-criticism, that beating yourself up, that being hard on yourself. And we all have that inner critic. We're all our own biggest critic. And I think one of the things that I love about compassion focused therapy is that it is quite clear, there's lots of research on it, that when we are kinder to ourselves, when we're more compassionate with ourselves in any situation, including situations around suffering, then we see an improvement in mental health, your well-being, healthier relationships, but also difficult times. Compassion isn't just letting yourself off the hook. It's not just being kind to yourself. It's really developing like a deep sense of care, acceptance, and empathy during difficult times. What you were saying around the disappointment with dating and things like that, it's not about saying, oh, well, it's, let me just be super kind to myself and ignore the fact that there's that disappointment. It's saying as well, like, dating is really disappointing a lot of the time. The long stretches of being single can be really, really difficult, that a lot of people don't realize how difficult those times can be. And that's really key, that it is about us suffering as well. Can I be kind to myself in a time of suffering? Because we are so mean to ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves during times of suffering. And I've spoken before about the 2 arrows that I read about in a book once, which is the first arrow is the thing. The first arrow is the painful thing, the disappointing thing that's hurt us, that's created this suffering. The second arrow is our inner dialogue. It's the way that we talk to ourselves, we beat ourselves up, we blame ourselves, and it's like just putting salt in the wound over and over again. I think as well, let me just say that something that's quite key with this is with self-compassion, loads of therapists now and experts are using this to help people successfully with like trauma, with mental health, to live like better lives, to overcome difficulties that they've been through. So I think that really shows that this can be a really great approach for you if you introduce more compassion into your life. It can be really, really effective, really help with feelings of shame, of guilt, which are so common in people that have experienced trauma, attachment difficulties, reoccurring issues, that kind of thing. But one of the names, and you can Google her, she's got a website called selfcompassion.org that comes up time and time again when it comes to self-compassion, is Kristen Neff. So she looks at there being kind of 3 elements, if you like, of self-compassion. The first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. So I want you to imagine a typical example that we see when it comes to anxious attachment is, imagine waiting anxiously for a text back from someone. Could be someone you're dating, it could be a friend, and your mind really starts to race. All of those thoughts coming up. They don't care about me. They don't like me. I've done something wrong. I've been too needy. The things that we see like over and over again. And judging ourselves for feeling this, judging ourselves for being, going through this. And this is the really simple idea of, instead of doing that, what if actually I was kinder to myself? What if I acknowledge that I'm experiencing this? What if I acknowledge that I'm in this kind of uncertainty and that I feel really anxious right now, and that I meet myself like I would a friend, that I offer myself kindness instead of judgment. And of course, we need to be able to step back out, like to pull out and zoom out to be able to do that. But can I just day to day be kinder to myself? The next element is isolation versus common humanity. I think this one is really powerful. And Brené Brown talks a lot about this, around the power of knowing that you're not on your own. So our difficulties, our struggles, especially if the immediate people around us are not experiencing the same difficulties that we are, but we often can feel like we're the only one struggling with a difficulty, a breakup, a relationship struggle, being single, whatever it is. But really, the reality is that many, many people around you that you can't see, because we cannot see what's going on inside, experience these fears as well. And it's just recognizing that this is part of a shared human experience, that there are many people experiencing this difficulty as well, that have before you and will after you. And it's really important that we know that we're not the only one to mess up. We're not the only one that makes, mistakes and wishes we'd done things differently. We're not the only ones that are single or going through heartbreak or experiencing rejection or failure. Um, it's not just us, and we often will. I'm always the one who messes things up. This always happens to me. It's like that second arrow again. So just knowing you're not alone is really, really powerful. And then the third element of self-compassion is mindfulness versus over identification. So, and I talk a lot about mindfulness, and I always will, and I think it's really, really effective. I think it's really important. It's really powerful when it comes to working with attachment. But it happens when you become so consumed by your thoughts, by your stories, by what you believe about certain situations. So when we replay a fight over and over in our heads, when we are convincing ourselves that someone doesn't like us or that we've done something wrong or this is always going to be the way, we become merged. We over identify with the thoughts that we're having. We believe them, we feel them, we are them, they are me, I am this, and we are no longer the observer. So mindfulness, on the other hand, encourages us to kind of notice the anxiety without letting it define us. You might practice it with the deep breathing. You might practice it with the guided meditations. You might just become the observer of your thoughts. But it is that, just like we did it at the beginning, just can I step back and notice the thoughts that I'm having, notice the feelings I'm having instead. On a scale of 0 to 10, for you, how, and 10 is really compassionate and 0 is really critical towards yourself, where would you place yourself in terms of self-compassion? Just check in with yourself now. Where would you already consider? And maybe actually, let me just take a step back. Yeah, let me ask you in general, where would you place yourself? When it comes to the difficulty that you are having with yourself at the moment, that's kind of up the top there, that you find yourself experiencing a lot of the time, how compassionate are you being towards yourself around that? How much understanding, how much mindfulness, how much non-judgment, how much are you recognizing that this is not just me? Really thinking of those three elements. Where would you place yourself from 0 to 10? And what happens when I do these scales with people most of the time, that in general, I can kind of see myself, that I have got the skills to be compassionate. I have got the skills to zoom out. I do know a lot of things from the inner work that I've done. However, when I actually look at what I'm hooked on at the moment and what's taking my attention and creating some discomfort, there's often less compassion. And I think that itself is just a sign for us to say, okay, can I be a bit kinder to myself in this situation? And I actually wonder if you can consider now, what would it look like for you to be a bit kinder and just be able to relax towards yourself a little bit in the current difficulty that you're experiencing? What would tomorrow look like if you could just give yourself a little bit more compassion, thinking about those three elements? And before we bring this to an end, just really taking that moment to be clear on how you can treat yourself with more kindness, speak to yourself with more kindness. You will have that inner knowing of how you can step into the rest of your day with more love, understanding, and kindness towards yourself. If you do find yourself knowing that I could really do with offering myself more compassion in my day-to-day life, then please do know that this is absolutely a huge part of becoming secure, not only in how I teach and what I teach, but in how we share with each other, in our interactions with each other, in me speaking to you and picking up when you're being overly critical and self-judgmental towards yourself. It's so powerful when we have someone there to say, hey, do you think that there's another way of looking at this? It's so powerful when you see my journey from self-criticism to self-compassion. So I'll absolutely be covering that a lot more in Becoming Secure. And like I say, we start that on the 7th of October. If you're listening to this after that, I still encourage you to go to the description, check out more about Becoming Secure. But certainly, if you're on the fence now and you're feeling that calling, please do consider taking that leap and joining us for round 4, Becoming Secure. I will be back here soon. It is an honor to be here in your ears. I do not take it for granted. And yeah, I will see you for another episode of Lessons in Attachment very soon.